What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video. That was a tough one to watch there. The Patriots lose to the Giants in their final preseason game. Final score of 42-10, and will be heading on to the regular season, opening up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home. So let's get right into this game breakdown. So really, in a final preseason game, there's not much to take away from an offense as a whole. More so just kind of looking at individual statistics here. However, the Patriots got absolutely dominated all night by the Giants' defense, especially in the trenches, whether it was the second string of the offensive line all the way down to the backups, just completely to the practice squad players, stuff like that. Really did not get a lot going on the offensive end on this night in particular. However, there were some times where the Patriots were able to make some plays. I felt like a guy like Jeremiah Webb continued to stand out, and I think that he's probably not going to make the roster in any way, but just having good depth at that wide receiver position. I believe he is a rookie. He's someone who I could certainly see coming back on the practice squad. And even his fellow wide receiver, a guy like John Giles, I felt like he had a pretty productive preseason in general. And also just taking a look at some of the other guys, it really does not bode well for Javon Baker. I believe he actually only had one catch in this entire preseason, and he was targeted several times. Tonight he actually had a couple of drops. Really weren't the greatest balls thrown to him. There were a couple of times behind him, but guess what? I mean, you have to make some of these catches, and he really just has struggled to really catch the ball from this preseason with several drops. So I think that Javon Baker might have just seen his last game as a New England Patriot if he's not brought back on the practice squad. Of course, Jalen Polk is now going to be on season-ending IR, so we might see him here next year as well. But honestly, from that draft class, everything's just not looking good for a lot of the draft picks beside Drake May. I mean, you can honestly say that the most productive one outside of Drake May thus far has been Marcellus Dial or Layden Robinson. And those are two guys who might not make this roster. Of course, Marcellus Dial did tear his ACL, so he will be on season IR as well. But speaking of guys like Layden Robinson and Caden Wallace, they're playing with the third string offensive line. So there's a very good chance that neither one of them make this roster. A guy like Cole Strange, who really was starting at the beginning of training camp at the left guard spot, has been de-elevated all the way to the third string offensive line. So I'd be very surprised if he makes this roster. And honestly, just in general, I think that's really the biggest takeaways you can take from this offense. Maybe some glimpses here and there. Jaheim Bell got a couple looks in there, did not record a catch, and was targeted several times. And it looked like him and Woolridge just were not on the same page on that pick six. The broadcast was talking about how it was possibly a bad throw behind Jaheim Bell. However, I thought that Woolridge really thought that Jaheim would stop and kind of plant there right in front of the defensive back. And of course, defensive back steps in front of him trying to run that out route and takes it to the house there. But taking a look at the starting O-line, you had your rookie 7th rounder Marcus Bryant opening up at left tackle, Jared Wilson at the left guard position, Ben Brown at center, Sidney So at right guard, and Vidarian Lowe at right tackle. And I would assume that the Patriots are probably going to keep 5 tackles on this roster. Of course, you're going to have Will Campbell and Morgan Moses. Marcus Bryant's probably going to be your third tackle, your swing tackle, first guy off the bench. I would assume Vidarian Lowe and Demontre Jacobs are probably going to be battling out for that 4th and 5th spot on this roster. But I think just considering the fact that you have an aging right tackle in terms of Morgan Moses, you're going to have to keep 5 tackles on this roster here. And I think those are probably your top 5, which honestly is not terrible considering the fact that they all have experience. However, we saw last year with a lot of them, guys like Vidarian Lowe and Demontre Jacobs, you're not necessarily the most talented. So hopefully you're going to be able to find some continuity along the offensive line. And you're really hoping that Morgan Moses and Will Campbell hit at the tackle position and allow Drake May to really get more time, because we saw what happened last year with the tackles and the offensive line in general. So it's very concerning with the tackle depth on this team. However, I do think that they have better depth this year and more talent this year than they had last year. It's really just going to be whether or not they're producing and if they're healthy or not. Moving over to the defensive side, there wasn't much to take away, really. The Giants were really tossing the ball all over the yard. And really my biggest takeaways were just playing time. It was pretty interesting, however, to see that Jabril Peppers and Craig Woodson were deep into this game, or at least playing this game in general, considering the fact that they're probably going to be the starting safeties. Maybe you remove Craig Woodson and you throw in Jalen Hawkins in that starting mix. But those are probably 2 safeties who are going to be playing a ton for this Patriots team on defense. And another huge storyline, of course, Kyle Duggar just playing deep into this game. And I'm a little, I don't want to say concerned, or it's pretty interesting considering the fact that Anthony Jennings did not play at all in this game. So I'm wondering if, based off what he did last game, the Patriots feel comfortable having him more so one of these rostered players, or if they're just trying to keep him healthy and really try and up his trade value, which is probably what they're doing with Kyle Duggar, just trying to have him play deep into this game. He did come up with an interception, and he made a couple nice open field tackles, so his trade stock is probably rising. But if a team is not willing to trade for Kyle Duggar, do you just eat his cap space and have him play amongst the reserves as one of your backup units, or do you just straight up release him and eat all that dead cap money? Because you have a guy like Del Pettis and even guys like Marcus Epps, who behind Duggar deserve more playing time. And I wouldn't even consider Marcus Epps in that category, but specifically Del Pettis, I think, has played really well at times here. And I think you want to get him more and more playing time, considering the fact that he's shown potential and he is a younger player. But having guys like Marcus Epps as well as Kyle Duggar, even though they do bring a little bit of a different play style than Del Pettis, especially Marcus Epps being more so that kind of deep safety that you could put back there, they are aging players, and they are both coming off of injuries last year. So maybe you want to keep Del Pettis over them just because Del Pettis has not shown a lot of signs of injuries. But moving over to some rookie defensive linemen, we saw guys like Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson get involved in this game. Joshua Farmer really only played the first quarter from what I saw. He had a couple of run stuffs in there, which is very nice because I wanted to see him develop as a run stuffer. And I wouldn't say that he's necessarily a roster lock, but it's a good sign for him that he only played one quarter in this game. And if he's not a roster lock, he's certainly going to be back on this practice squad if another team picks him up. I do think that the Patriots might have to keep him on this roster just for some tackle depth, especially considering the fact that some of their other defensive tackle depth has gone down this season. And maybe a guy like Jeremiah Farms is left off this roster because you want to kind of stash Farmer for some upcoming seasons. And we even saw a little bit of glimpses from Braden Swinson here. I think that he can certainly be put on this practice squad. I'm not certain that you're going to have to keep him on this roster, but he played deep into this game. I saw that he actually missed a tackle on one of the running plays there, so not the best in terms of performance from Braden Swinson in this game. However, we really just haven't seen that much of him in this preseason in general, so I'm wondering what's going to happen with him. I would assume that he's probably going to be more so a practice squad player for you here, and you might look for him to make some more contributions in the upcoming seasons here. But sticking with the rookies, let's switch over to Kobe Minor. Kobe Minor had himself a tough night. There was times where he was missing tackle early on in the game. He had a tackle for loss in the backfield that he ended up missing. There were times where he was just allowing receptions in front of him. And I will allow receptions in front of you. However, when you're getting beat deep multiple times in this game and you're getting lucky by guys dropping balls and then you get beat again, really never even got his hands on the wide receiver and just gave up an uncontested deep ball touchdown, that's really just inexcusable. So it was not a good performance from Kobe Minor. Maybe you try to get him back on the practice squad here, but he's not going to be making this roster anytime soon, especially when you have guys like DJ James and Alex Austin performing as well as they did during this preseason. It really is going to be tough for him to really find a roster spot. So practice squad's probably the way with Kobe Minor. But even guys who are playing deep into the game like Marte Mapu, that's another really interesting player here because Marte Mapu is probably going to have to be considered a linebacker for him to really make this team with the safety depth that the Patriots have, especially if you keep guys like Kyle Duggar or Marcus Epps. It's going to be very difficult for Marte Mapu to really make this roster as a safety. So you might want to keep him as a linebacker. You're going to have Robbie Spillane. Jack Gibbons had himself a really nice game. He actually forced a fumble on a play that really did not count, but he had a sack, I believe, with Jeremiah Farms as well. It was a very good game from Jack Gibbons, and that's your competition at the linebacker spot, Robbie Spillane, Gibbons, as well as even guys like Jelani Tavai if they're going to be ending up making this roster. Tavai has been injured for the majority of this preseason and really haven't seen him whatsoever, so maybe you're going to want to keep Marte Mapu as a linebacker, but I really don't see him making this team as a safety. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there, how Elliott Wolf and Mike Vrabel handle that situation. But overall, not that much to take away. for me on the night on performance-wise, it was more so just the playing time in general and where guys were really playing specifically in this game, if they were playing deep into this game or what kind of units they are playing with, because I think that's the biggest clue and indication of who's going to be making this team and who's not going to be making this team. All right, everyone, that's going to conclude this game recap here. The next time I talk to you, it's going to be real football. Like I said before, opening up at home versus Vegas, the Patriots are favored. I think that's a game that Patriots fans should expect to win here, get off to a good start, and from there, ride out the NFL season, and let's see how Mike Vrabel does in his first season as the Patriots head coach. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the upcoming Patriots season, and I'll see you all in the next one.